My role in this class was essentially to teach the students how to produce film. And so that essentially involves writing, filming, and editing their ideas into films, but also keeping in mind that they were trying to incorporate what they had already learned and what they were learning in their psychology courses at KPU. So as an instructor, I had to think about the pedagogy for teaching them about production really quickly. So what did they actually need to know, and what was the fastest way to teach them this material? So I essentially broke it down into 4 sections. The first section was film production tips and tricks, and so I developed some online resources that they could use to kind of refer back to after the class, and I gave a class essentially on how to use your own camera. So I got all the students to bring in their own cameras. I brought in my cameras. They were mostly DSLR cameras, and we spent some time basically just playing with cameras. And then we talked about composition, things like using the rule of thirds. We looked at some images, and then we looked at some of the basics of exposure on a DSLR camera, such as aperture, shutter speed, that sort of thing. And so we just gave them some vocabulary. I'm going to include a link to these resources either from this video or right below in this section of the blog, so that you can check out those resources as well. The second portion was essentially a class in Final Cut Pro 10, and I use Final Cut Pro as compared to Premiere Pro, mostly because I do a lot of music video production, and there's things about Final Cut Pro that really work for me as a musician, and they also work really well for doing short little narrative films or little mini docs. So that was my video editing software of choice. And so again, what I did is I prepared ahead of time a demonstration video that I put on my YouTube channel that I gave to the students as a link to use as a reference, and then I also gave an in-class demonstration so that they would know just what they need to know to complete this project. And I actually produced a class like a class assignment, although it wasn't from marks, that included some previously existing video clips, and then I walked all the students through the exact same process so everybody learned the same skills. So how to do basic edits, how to add lower thirds, how to add transitions, and some credits at the end and that sort of thing. The third section was then production, and so we had to talk about how to put together a production proposal, how to put together a shot list, and then the students had to actually put together a proposal for Jocelyn and I. We gave them a template, and I'll make sure I attach the template on the blog, and also a shot list. And so I gave them an example of some shot lists, and I'll make sure that you have access to that on this site as well. And then I went and actually filmed with a couple of the groups. So I went in on a Saturday and worked with the group that ended up creating the film Two Guys Walk Into a Bar. And then I kind of oversaw bits and pieces of some of the other projects, or I would look at their footage and I would give them constructive feedback and possibly send them back to get other shots, or sometimes to even redo shots. So that was a bit of a bummer for some of the students, but in the end they were really happy for the feedback because it made their films better. The fourth of the 4 main components in my portion of the pedagogy here was post-production. And so I think we assigned 3 classes to post-production, and then we also made sure the students had access to some of the computers so that they could work on their own time. And I don't think any of the groups were able to get done their post-production in just the 3 classes, so they all ended up coming in at some point and using the extra computers. And so this is something that we might change in the next iteration of this course, is creating an allowance for more time for post-production. And there we go. So those were the 4 main components. So film production tips and tricks, how to use Final Cut Pro, production, how to actually do the filming and the planning for the filming, and then the actual post-production time and using good time management strategies.